The Oracl Network. Look deeper.
Every life has a story, and every story an ending. But he died one reason or another, and now they have this body that they're in hiding. But not all endings are happy. And was given a severe beating, including having his head bashed into the floor repeatedly until he was semi-conscious. I'm Devil Dan. Won't you join us as we walk through the blue side of the mountain? Blue Side of the Mountain can be found on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and many more.
Hey, Rainbow Warriors. This is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for young children, and maybe not even for some adults. I tend to swear like a sailor, and I'm kind of proud of that. Listener discretion is advised. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBT. I'm your host, CJ. For those of you who have listened to quite a few of my episodes, you're probably saying my opening statement with me. My friend Eric in Albuquerque told me his husband was walking around their house saying it all day long not too long ago. I gotta say, that just kind of tickled me. Before I get started, let me give you the usual information. You can find me on Facebook at Beyond the Rainbow Pod, and I started a new page also on Facebook called Rainbow Crimes, Unicorn Justice. You can also find me on Twitter at Rainbow Crimes and on Instagram at Rainbow Crimes 12 or Beyond the Rainbow Pod. That last one I lost access to, and then all of a sudden it reappeared, so I have 2 Instagram accounts. Check out my website at beyondtherainbowpodcast.com. And if you have a case suggestion, I'd love to hear it. My email is beyondtherainbowpod@gmail.com. I'll put all this information in the show notes where I list my resources. This episode's missing but not forgotten LGBTQ person is Brian Neil Hooks. I'll refer to him as Neil because he preferred to go by his middle name. Neil was last seen September 24, 1988 in Florence, South Carolina. At the time of his disappearance, he was only 21 years old, and should he be found alive, he'd be 53 years old today. Neil stood at 5'7", and he weighed 140 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He also had sandy blondish-brown hair and blue eyes. Neil has a scar on his left wrist and a tattoo of a cross on his left shoulder. He was also in need of some dental work because his front teeth were decaying at the time he went missing. It appears that Neil was in a domestic abuse type relationship with a guy named Sam. The last day he was seen by his family was the day he went missing, September 24, 1988. He dropped by his family's home to tell them that he and Sam were going on a weekend trip to Myrtle Beach in Florida. Neil promised the family he would call as soon as he got home from his trip, but that call never came. Neil was extremely close with his mom. Days after he should have returned, his sister Amy called the house he shared with Sam. A male's voice answered, and when Amy asked to speak to Neil, the male voice told her, "No one by that name lives here," and hung up on her. Amy called back, and when the voice answered, she asked to speak to Sam. It was Sam on the phone, and he told her that Neil had run off and didn't say where he was going. To this day, Sam remains a person of interest in Neil's disappearance. Neil's family doesn't believe he's alive any longer, and that's because he had this wonderful bond with his mom. He never went more than a day or so without talking to her, and now it's been 32 years. If you or someone you might know has information about Brian Neil Hooks' disappearance, please contact the Florence County Sheriff's Office at area code 843-665-2121. Neil's family would love to bring him home and have proper closure. I'm curious. Not that kind of curious. That I already know. But what I'm wondering is how many of you have stayed friends with an ex-lover? I can honestly say out of the 7 or 8 romantic relationships I've ever had in my life, I stayed friends with one. Well, maybe 1.5. And even then, my contact isn't often, just occasionally. Like, Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday. For me, being friends with someone after a breakup is one of the hardest things ever. How do you move on if your ex is still in your life continually? If I really love someone, my heart has a tendency to want to cling. And so did Brandy Stevens Rosine's heart. But for Brandi, she couldn't just let go of love. Even when her ex had another girlfriend, the only thing that mattered to Brandi was that her ex, Jade Olmstead, was happy. Brandi still had feelings for Jade, and she would do anything for her. If Jade asked Brandi to drop everything and help her with something, or listen to her talk about life, or even drive her 300 miles somewhere, Brandi was more than happy to do it. She remained good friends with Jade because Brandi, she was sweet. She was a genuine, caring person and a really good friend. And Jade was Brandi's first real love. Jade might have loved Brandi, but more than likely, Jade loved the things Brandi would provide her. And she loved how wonderfully Brandi treated her. Brandi worked her ass off as a waitress, and the money she made was spent on Jade's desires. Whatever Jade needed, Brandi was there for it. Jade was 2 years younger than Brandi. The two young women met in 2009. Brandi would have been a junior in high school, or for those of you overseas, in her 11th year. The two girls didn't become romantically involved until 2011. Brandy Stevens Rosine grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. She graduated from high school in 2010. While she was in high school, she struggled coming to terms with her sexuality. Brandi's mom, Carrie, said she knew her daughter was a lesbian way before Brandi even realized it. And Carrie didn't care. She embraced her daughter for who she was. This made Brandi's coming out process go much smoother than it has for many other young people, including Jade Olmstead. For Jade, being a lesbian was an embarrassment for her family. They wanted her to stop being gay. And I don't understand why people think that there's some kind of button or switch for homosexuality. It's not something any of us can turn on or off. Regardless, Jade would end up getting together with Brandi, in spite of what her family thought. Jade even moved into Brandi's room at Brandi's grandma's house. What did Jade bring to the table of this relationship? Well, very little. She was lazy and she didn't want to pull her weight financially in the relationship. She didn't want to go get a job. Basically, Jade was a freeloader and Brandi was her cash cow. Brandi had some health concerns. She was diabetic and she took insulin daily to control it. But in spite of her diabetes, Brandi still managed to get to work and earn her paycheck. After almost a year of being together, Jade started to get bored being with Brandi. She didn't care that Brandi would give her the moon if she asked for it. Greedy, greedy Jade. She wanted more. She called her ex-girlfriend Ashley BARBER up in Crawford County, Pennsylvania. That's about an hour and 15 minutes from where Jade stayed with Brandi. Jade and Ashley got to talking and they decided they wanted to get back together. And one day when Brandi was at work, Jade grabbed her stuff along with Brandi's iPod and cash that Brandi had in her room, and Ashley had her parents drive her to go pick up Jade at Brandi's grandma's house. When Brandi found out that Jade had essentially dined and dashed at her expense, well, she was hurt and disappointed. But she was forever the romantic, and she wanted to keep a friendship with Jade. She had this glimmer of hope that someday her and Jade would be together again. In 2012, Brandi had enrolled at Youngstown State University in Ohio. She decided she was going to double major in sociology and psychology. Life was pretty good for Brandi. She would get the occasional call from Jade, asking her to drop everything and take her here or there, or to listen to Jade bellyache about something. but Brandi was more than happy to do so. Brandi's family and friends told her that Jade was just using her, move on. But Brandi couldn't help herself. Jade's girlfriend, Ashley BARBER, she wasn't so happy about Jade having contact with Brandi either. Ashley loathed Brandi. She'd never met Brandi, but she hated her very existence on Earth. Brandi and Jade would text back and forth sometimes, and everything seemed fine. That is until Ashley would get involved and make the situation downright vile. To call Jade a toxic connection between the three young women, that would be an understatement. May 17, 2012, Brandi, who's now 20 years old, receives a phone call, and it made the butterflies in her stomach get all aflutter again. It was 18-year-old Jade, and she said she wanted to see Brandi again. Excitedly, Brandi lied and told her grandmother she was going to visit a certain friend, not Jade. Then Brandi jumped in her car, and she took the hour and 15-minute trip to Pennsylvania to see Jade. On the drive to Jade, Brandi did call a friend, the one she told her grandmother she was going to visit. She told her friend that she had a weird feeling in her gut. She wasn't sure if it was the butterflies or if it was an intuition that something bad was going to happen. So she gave her friend the address of where she was going to be. Upon arriving at Jade's new living arrangement at Ashley BARBER's parents' home, Jade ran out of the house. She seemed very happy and excited to see Brandi. She ran into Brandi's arms and hugged her tightly. After this greeting and a lot of smiling between the two young women, Brandi was hopeful that this was going to be the start of rekindling their relationship. Jade suggested a romantic stroll in the woods. But as most of us know, the woods have predators. They have bears, mountain lions, snakes in the grass, and Ashleys. That's right. 20-year-old Ashley BARBER was lying in wait for her prey in the woods. When Ashley saw Jade with Brandi, she jumped out, and she started to hit and kick Brandi. Jade slipped behind Brandi and put her in a chokehold. Ashley was pummeling Brandi, but Brandi tried to fight back. Then Ashley headbutted Brandi, and Brandi fell to the ground crying. She was pleading for her life, telling the two snakes in the grass if they let her go, she wouldn't tell anyone. That's when Jade took a shovel that was nearby. You see, Jade and Ashley had used that shovel earlier to dig a shallow grave, but now Jade lifted it and she slammed the shovel several times into Brandi's head. Brandi screamed in pain. Her skull was fractured, and blood was squirting everywhere from where the shovel's sharp side had made contact to Brandi's head. Ashley put a rope around Brandi's neck, and she attempted to strangle her. And then, as though it were some type of game, Ashley would pull the rope up and lift Brandi's neck and head up, and then she would just let go of it, sending Brandi's head crashing into a tree stump. She did this repetitively. Both girls knew Brandi was still alive, so they rolled her into the grave they had dug. Ashley picked up a large rock, and she smashed it down on Brandi's head. Using the shovel, they started to throw dirt onto Brandi to cover her. Still hearing gurgling sounds coming from Brandi, the girls poured a full bottle of water over Brandi's face, trying to drown her. The conniving, evil-seated little bitches then proceeded to cover the rest of Brandi up until her lungs filled with dirt. After they buried her, they burned her shoes and some other personal items she had brought with her. Back at her house, Brandi's grandmother started to worry about her granddaughter when she didn't show up back home from her friend's house that night. She went into Brandi's room and she saw that Brandi hadn't taken her backpack, and that backpack contained Brandi's insulin that she needed for her diabetes. Frantic, the grandmother tried to call Brandi's phone, but it kept going to voicemail. She felt like there wasn't anything she could do. She would go to bed and hope and pray Brandi would be there in the morning. The next morning, Brandi wasn't. She still hadn't shown up home. So her grandmother called Brandi's mom, Carrie. Carrie immediately went to the police in Brandi's hometown in Ohio, and she filled out a missing persons report. Then Kelley started to do some detective work on her own. She started with Brandy's cell phone. She was able to see where Brandy's phone pinged. The phone had pinged on a street in Pennsylvania. So Kelley gathered up some of Brandy's friends and they went to that street. The team went door to door and they distributed flyers of Brandy. But it seemed like no one had seen her. Another one of Brandy's friends provided Kelley with a different lead. This friend had Ashley BARBER on her social media, and the friend had seen that Ashley BARBER posted pictures of her arms, and they had massive bruises all over them. And this was just the day after Brandy was reported missing. Kelley also tracked more information from Brandy's phone. She got a list of all the calls that Brandy received and placed that day that she disappeared. Kelley ended up calling that friend that Brandy was supposed to be going to. And that friend told Kelley about Brandy's ominous message to her about having a weird feeling. And she gave Kelley the address as to where Brandy said she'd be. That day, Kelley and one of Brandy's friends drove back to Pennsylvania. It had now been 5 days since Brandy had gone missing. They pulled up to Ashley BARBER's parents' house. Jade, Ashley, and Ashley's father were all standing outside. Jade walked out to where Kelley was parked. And Kelley said,
"You know why I'm here."
Jade replied,
"No, I don't."
"You know Brandy's missing."
"Well, yeah, she's not here."
"Well, she was coming here. I mean, she had a bad feeling, but this is the address that she said she'd be at. This is her last known location. She was here."
"No, she never made it here. We were at the hospital, and Brandy knew we weren't going to be here, so she turned around and went back."
"I don't believe a fucking word you say."
That's when Ashley came down and said,
"Whoa, whoa, whoa.
"Don't whoa me. My daughter has been missing for 5 days, and this is the last known place she was at."
Frustrated and beyond angry, Kelley and Brandy's friend left and they headed to the Pennsylvania State Police Department. Once there, they gave them all the information they had on Brandy's disappearance. The very next day, Pennsylvania State Police received a phone call from Ashley BARBER's mother. She told them, there's a car in my garage, and I have no idea who it belongs to. That's when the state police decided they needed to take a visit to the BARBER residence. They took a look at the car. It was a blue Kia Rio. And from the report that Kelley had made to them about Brandy, it matched exactly what the missing girl was driving. But apparently Brandy wasn't too careful about keeping the inside of her car very clean. In fact, some would say that the inside usually looked like a pigsty. But the car that the state police found in the BARBER's garage was immaculately clean inside. What are you thinking, Rainbow Warriors? The same thing I'm thinking? That these little bitches went and cleaned it up to try to remove evidence? Well, the funny thing about that is the two snakes in the grass denied to Kelley that Brandy was ever there. How very interesting that Brandy's car is in the garage of Ashley's parents. And why the state police didn't take both Jade and Ashley in for questioning right then and there is beyond me. They waited until the next day to visit the BARBER home again. And this time, Ashley and Jade had packed their shit up and took off in the middle of the night. These bitches were on the run. Unfortunately for them, an off-duty state policeman spotted Ashley and Jade. He recognized them from a bolo. That's a be on the lookout for notice that he received that morning. The girls were picked up and they were taken in for questioning. As that was happening, other officers and detectives were searching the BARBER home and the land nearby it. In the woods, they found the shallow grave. Police started digging and they unearthed Brandy's body. An autopsy report showed that there was blunt force trauma to her head, her body. She had a fractured skull. She had 15 lacerations to her head. And the cause of death was dirt filling her lungs and suffocating her. At the police station, Ashley and Jade were being interviewed separately. Ashley changed her story of Brandy never making it to the house. She tells detectives now that, yeah, Brandy did show up. They played video games, and Brandy was waiting for a phone call from a woman she was supposed to meet in Pennsylvania there, named Jamie. Ashley goes on to say that the phone call came and Brandy stepped outside to take the call from Jamie. And when she came back in, Brandy's face looked like she had just won the lottery. Right, Ashley. And then Ashley changes up her story again. She says that her father was pissed off that Brandy showed up at their house, and he started to make a bunch of homophobic remarks, and then he took Brandy outside and attacked her with a shovel. Oh my God, can you just stop? You might as well say aliens beamed her up from their spaceship. It'd be a hell of a lot more plausible. Word gets back to the police station that they have found Brandy's body. The young women now know they've been busted. They're arrested for first-degree murder. They both plead guilty, although Ashley tried to retract her guilty plea, but darn it all to heck, she was too late and missed the deadline. Jade was tried for Brandy's murder first. She was convicted of first-degree murder and she received a life sentence with no parole. Ashley received the same sentence as Jade, life without parole. But, of course, Ashley tried to appeal her sentence. And thankfully, there was some justice to this case. Ashley was denied. A journal of Ashley's was found after the search of her parents' house. The writings give a little insight about the devious, vindictive mind Ashley has. In the notebook were a bunch of sordid entries about Brandy, what she wanted to do to Brandy, and what she ended up doing to Brandy. But there was one entry in particular that really hit me hard, and maybe it's because I'm a mom. The entry was addressed to Brandy's mom, Carrie, and it read,
I fucking killed your 20-year-old mistake. She deserved it, bitch.
And honestly, I feel Jade has some mental issues that need addressing as well. A notebook of hers was found too, and in it she writes,
I don't believe we'll ever get caught. Do I feel guilty? No, not 1 ounce. I'm proud.
The media like to call this case a love triangle, but I don't believe it is. I don't see any love there except for maybe Brandy. Jade's a manipulative mindfucker, and Ashley's a jealous, rageful asshole. So I think this was more of a convoluted algebraic equation of shit. I'd like to thank Jen at Our True Crime Podcast for lending her voice of Brandy's mom, Carrie, and to Kelley at Wining About Herstory for giving killer Ashley BARBER a voice in this episode. Oh, and I'd like to thank my daughter, Dakota. She gave a voice to the killer Jade Olmstead. If you haven't listened to Our True Crime Podcast or Wining About Herstory yet, please take a moment to subscribe and listen. Both are such excellent shows. Thanks for listening, Rainbow Warriors. Until next time, remember, it's not a crime to be gay. Unless you're a murderer.